Hello everyone, welcome to today's SAT practice. Today we are looking at question 27 from the practice bundle 6. So let's dive right in. In a given system of equations, R is a constant. If the system has no solution, what is the value of R? So first let's think about what concept we will need to use in order to solve this question, right? System of equations means nothing more than two lines on the xy plane, right? So we would have two lines, right? And they're saying that the system has no solution, right? No solution. So what does it mean if two lines have a solution? Let's think about that example first. Well, if two lines have a solution, that means on the xy plane, forgive me, my drawing's not too great, but let's just say we have two lines on the xy plane. If they have a solution, the solution is the point of intersection, right? However, the problem tells us that these two lines, or this system of equation, has no solution. That means the two lines will never touch. And what's another word for two lines that never touch? Parallel lines, right? So if a system of equation has no solution, you should instantly think the two lines are parallel. And if two lines are parallel, right? Parallel lines, that means they have the same slope, okay? So now we have some more info that can let us figure out what R is, right? So we know that this line and then this line, their slope should be exactly the same, even though they might be at a different position on the graph, right? We might have one line that's more up here, down there, another line maybe is up here. Doesn't really matter. What we care about is the slope. So let's try and rewrite these two equations in a way that the slope becomes a little bit more clear, right? So in this equation, usually it's better to start with the equation that doesn't have the unknown value and then go from there, right? So let's try and rewrite this equation, right? Let's try and rewrite this one in a way that we can figure out what the slope is, okay? So there are two forms that I'm going to show you in a way that you can use to solve this. The first form is one everybody might be familiar with. It's called slope-intercept form, right? Okay, this is what we call slope-intercept form, right? Next, we can also try solving it using standard form, right? Standard form is ax plus by equals some constant c, okay? So I'll show you both methods. One is faster than the other, and I'll let you know right now, this method is faster than the other. So if you want to find this method, skip to the other part of the video. But right now, I'm going to show you how to solve it using slope-intercept form, okay? So let's just say maybe you forgot about standard form. That's no big issue. If you remember slope-intercept form, you will be able to still solve this, albeit maybe in a little more time, right? So let's first start by making this top equation into slope-intercept form, right? Now, notice that all of these numbers, they all are even numbers, and if you look a little bit closer, they all can be divided by 8, right? So let's try and factor out an 8 and make this easier to work with, right? So on this side, we will factor out an 8. So that becomes 8 times 6 is 48, right? So this is going to become 6x, okay? And then this one right here, 8 times 8 is 64, right? So this is going to be minus 8y, okay? And let's do the same on this side. Equals, let's factor out an 8. So again, this is going to be 8 times the quantity 6y plus 24. So 8 times 3 is 24, right? So we're just going to add 8 plus 3, right? So if we have a common factor on both sides, we can cross them out. You can imagine we're just dividing both sides by 8. And what we're left with is, going to just scroll down. Okay, now that we have some smaller numbers, let's try and isolate the y term. So I like to just keep every y on the left-hand side. So let's just move this 6y over by subtracting by 6y. And then let's move this 6x over to the other side by subtracting by 6x. So that cancels out. That cancels out. Then we got to do whatever we do on one side, we got to do the other side. So minus 6y over here, minus 6x on this side. Then we are left with minus 8 minus 6. That becomes minus 14y. And that is going to be equal to 3 minus 6x, right? So 3 minus 6x, okay. Now let's divide by minus 14. Minus 14 on this side, and divide by minus 14 on this side, right? So we are left with y is equal to minus 6x over minus 14. And then we're going to be left with a negative, right? Because 3 minus 14 is going to be a negative fraction. So then we're left with 3 over 14, right? We can further simplify this a little bit too. So minus and minus, those cancel out. And then 6 and 14, they have a common denominator of 2. So we actually get 3x over 7 minus 3 over 14. Okay, so that wasn't too bad. Now we have our first equation in y equals mx plus b form, or slope-intercept form. So our m term, right, we know now m is equal to 3 over 7. Okay, that is what we need to find now in the other equation, right? So if I go back to the top, right, now know the slope of one line, and remember, since these have no solution, right, these two lines have no solution, that means the slope of this line is going to be the same. It's going to be 3 over 7 as well. So let's try and put this equation into slope-intercept form as well and see what happens. So I'm going to move this over here. Let's use a different color because, why not? Let's see what I got. Let's try green. All right, let's get it. So let's just divide by r on this side and divide by r on this side. We are left with then y is equal to 1 over 8 divided by r. That's the same thing as if we did 1 over 8 times 1 over r, which would be just 1 over 8r, okay? Because then whenever you divide a fraction, you basically just have to do keep, switch, and flip, right? You keep the first fraction, you switch division to multiplication, right? And then you flip this thing you're dividing by, right? So instead of r, you times it by 1 over r, right? So that becomes 1 over 8r minus, so then negative 12x divided by r, that's just going to be minus 12 over rx, right? And I'm just writing it this way so it's easy to identify what is our m term, right? So this we can rewrite into slope-intercept form, right? Kind of already is already in slope-intercept form by saying minus 12 over rx plus 1 over 8r, right? So now we know that this term is our slope. And remember, these lines are parallel. So this term right here is going to be the same as this term right here. So given that we have a relationship now between these two equations, we can solve for r, okay? So let's try and do that. Let's use a nice red color, why not? All right, so we know that 3 over 7 has to be equal to minus 12 over r, okay? So a nice little trick that is, saves you some time when you have to solve an equation where an unknown variable is equated by two fractions is to cross multiply, right? So multiply these two terms with each other and then multiply these two terms with each other, right? So what we get is 3 times r is going to equal 3r, and 3r is going to equal 7 times minus 12, which is equal to negative 84, right? Now all we got to do is divide by 3, divide this one by 3, then we are left with r by itself. Let me scroll down a little bit. We're left with r by itself, so then these two cancel out, and that becomes r is equal to negative 84 divided by 3, right? So let's divide this out. You can use your calculator, but I like to practice. So 3 goes into 8 2 times, right? So we know that we have this negative, so then that will go into 8 2 times. So 3 times 2 is 6. 8 minus 6 is 2. So then we have a remainder of 2. So then this becomes not 8, but 24. I'm pretty much just doing long division in my head. Yeah, maybe I should write that out, but you guys could use your calculator on the test, so I don't expect you to do it all this. But then we get 3 by 24, so that becomes 8, right? So then our answer is r is equal to negative 28, right? Nice. Now let's look at the faster method, right? Before I showed you the slope-intercept method, now we're going to look at the standard form method. And the reason why this is faster is you can put both of these equations into standard form and then easily identify the value of r based on the scale factor between the two equations. So let's just dive right in. It'll make more sense when I explain it. So first things first, let's move and make this top equation into standard form, right? So if I write it down over here, now the first thing we need to do is make all the x terms and the y terms on one side, right? Because if we look at standard form, we see we have ax plus by equals c, right? So all the x and y terms are on one side. So let's start by subtracting both sides by minus 48y. 48y minus 48y, that's going to equal 0. Minus 64 minus 48y, and that is going to be 112, right? 8 plus 4 is going to be 12, carry the 1, 6 plus 4 is 10, 11. Again, you guys can use your calculators, so if you want to use your calculator, feel free to do that. I just do it in my head because it's easy. We are left with 48x minus 112y equals 24, all right? So we have our first equation in standard form. Let's do the second one. Right next to it, I'm going to write it out. Again, we want to move the x and y terms to the same side. So let's do that by adding both sides, 12x to both sides rather. This cancels out. Then we are left with 12x plus ry equals 1 over 8. All right. Now, remember, these two lines are parallel lines, right? Because they have no solution, right? That means they are parallel lines. So, because they are parallel lines, when parallel lines are in standard form, each term meaning the x term and the y term times some scale factor will equal the x term and the y term of the other equation, the other parallel line, right? So we need to figure out 48 times what equals 12, right? So we know that if we times 48 by 1 over 4, right? Because that is our scale factor, we would get 12, right? Basically, 48 by 4 is equal to 12. Similarly, we can do the exact same to figure out what r is going to be, right? Because we know, okay, 48 divided by 1/4 is going to be equal to 12. So negative 12 times 1/4 is going to give us r, right? So we can rewrite this as r is equal to, scroll down a little bit, So R is going to be equal to negative 112 times 1 over 4, which in other words means negative 112 divided by 4, which would be nothing more than negative 28. So there you have it, 2 methods to solve this SAT problem. One was the slope-intercept form, which is a little bit slower, took more time, and the other is standard form, which will save you a lot more time, right? So if you like this video, please thumbs up it, subscribe, and leave a comment if you want me to improve anything, and definitely check out khanacademy.org. I'll put the link in the description. They have loads of good lessons and practice problems that you can use to get that great SAT score. Take care, everybody. See you next time.